Welcome to the Survivor to Thriver show with your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Do you feel stuck, silent, and stressed? Is something hurting your heart and soul? Are you burning yourself out? If so, you are in the right place because this is the podcast people from all over the world join in to learn exactly how to stop suffering and start living with inner peace and joy. Let's get started. Hey, last episode, I shared with you some of the most important lessons that I have learned about the forgiveness process and forgiveness itself. And I learned these lessons in the context of the most difficult forgiveness challenge that I have faced to date in my life. And that is the challenge of forgiving my abuser, the person who sexually abused me as a child. In fact, I can tell you that for all the progress that I shared with you, that I have made over the course of the last more than 2 decades, there's still room for improvement, right? Because I told you, okay, so here I started with, my motivation when I first started to engage in the forgiveness process was that I simply wanted to feel some peace for myself. And I realized for me to feel that peace, I had to let go of the anger and the hatred that I was feeling. But it was all about me and what I needed, what I wanted. And even as I made a commitment to let go of those negative feelings and in so doing begin the process of forgiveness towards this person, I didn't want anything to do with that person. I didn't by any means feel any kind of sympathy for that person. I did not basically want anything to do with him, right? In fact, I felt rather disgusted, right? But it was a step up from where I was, because feeling disgusted by him, it was kind of like, oh, he's sick. I feel disgusted by him, keep him away from me. Whereas before, it had just been a lot of actually even fear to some extent, right? And just a lot of this anger and hatred. And it was just like a very confusing mix of feelings, really. But when I shifted into the state of feeling the sense of disgust, because I started thinking of him as being someone who was sick, it sort of shifted the sense of power dynamics in my head. At one level, of course, I still perceived him to be like this crazy person, right? He's like sick in like he's crazy and but still dangerous kind of way. But nonetheless, it's a little bit like, just think about it. This is like, just think about how you yourself might find yourself thinking about somebody that you have labeled in your mind as a crazy person, And of course, you perceive yourself to be normal in comparison, right? And we have been brought up, to have like all these kinds of value judgments and stuff, and the label that we put on people of crazy, right? That's not a good label, right? And it's a label that makes us look down on the person that we label as crazy. And by comparison, when we label someone else as crazy and we look down on them, it raises us up in our own eyes, right? Does it not? Yeah, it does, right? So that's where I had started with. And look, I'm not saying that labeling people crazy is a good thing. And I'm not saying that's what you should do, but it was just the reality of my life at that point, that this was literally the best I could do at that time. Like I made my best effort at that time to engage in the forgiveness process, to try and be empathetic towards this person, garner some kind of empathy, compassion for him. And this was literally the best I could do, because my sense of anger and resentment and hatred for him was just so intense at that point. Okay? So the important thing here is again to look at things in context, right? And so at least I began the process, right? That's the most important thing. Because then remember what happened is that over time I was able to shift away from thinking of him, he's sick, as a crazy, dangerous, evil person, to he's sick, and now I'm thinking, okay, he's kind of pathetic. He's someone to feel like sorry for because he's so pathetic, right? And at that point in time, the reason I had begun to see this perspective was because, shifted into this perspective was because, again, I'm trying to make this honest effort to forgive this person and let go of my own negative emotions, to gain a more sympathetic perspective or empathetic perspective of what he's doing. And so after the first, attempt, certainly, and by the way, it was like, I don't remember anymore exactly how long it was between these major transitions, but you can be sure that I was going through the process again and again and again and again, right? It was kind of like I was able to sort of open my eyes up, and I was able to be a little bit less consumed by myself, by my own pain and sense of suffering, and kind of take a look at what was going on around me, and particularly with him and in his life. And the thing was that a part of me had previously been so focused on just me, my suffering, and my pain, and all that, that I never really thought about how he may be suffering, or he may not be doing very well either, right? Especially because, on the surface of things, certainly, you see, he appeared to, this person's member of my extended family, right? So I am actually aware of what's happening in his life, even to this day. Not in all the details, but broadly speaking. And for several years, I was actually living in the same home as this person, right? So I did have a sense of, okay, what's going on in his life. And so as I engage in the forgiveness process and I begin to shift my focus away just from me, and what I'm feeling, and how much I'm suffering and how much pain I am, I'm starting to notice that, hey, this person, I mean, his life is not problem free either. Turns out that he has some very unhealthy relationships in his life. And now I'll make another confession and confess to you that at that time, when I first started becoming aware of, some of the problems that he was struggling with in his life, it actually made me kind of feel satisfied to know that he was also facing challenges in his life, and that everything was not just happy and for him. And like for me, of course, and at that time I was like pretty young, still a teenager, and like for me it was like very easy to it's like, be like, serves him right to be suffering in this way, because of what he did to me. Serves him right. But all this while I'm trying to also forgive him, right, for what he did to me. But this other part of me is like, serves him right, but the progress that, making some progress, okay, it's actually kind of pathetic. Not everything's going perfectly for him. In fact, in many ways, he's pretty miserable. So that was the next big shift, right? But then I make another really big shift, another really big breakthrough. And by the way, it's like, it was not until I made this third shift and breakthrough where I actually, for the first time, felt some compassion for him. That I felt any kind of just like real sense of, I would say, human-to-human connection with this person, right? Because up until the point where I made that third major shift and actually began to feel compassionately towards him, because by this point in time, I had, in my own life, got to a place where I was doing really, really well, living with a lot of inner peace, even joy in my life, had a lot of contentment and sense of fulfillment, surrounded by a lot of healthy relationships, living a life of meaning and purpose. And now, by comparison, when I looked at his life, I could see, wow, I mean, it's like the tables have really kind of turned, and not because of anything that I did to harm him, by the way. Nothing to do with anything that I did to him, because I was, not even speaking to this person by this time. I hadn't even seen him in many, many years, because we had moved away, and so on and so forth. So, just on his own, it was like his life, just continuing to, in many ways, be stuck in a really negative place and getting more negative in some ways, whereas my life, by God's grace, was moving in an upward spiral. And for the very first time, I felt a sense of compassion for this person. And, as I felt this sense of compassion for him, it brought forth to my mind, a great teaching. This is teaching in the Quran, which is the holy scripture of the Muslims, in which in the context of talking about forgiveness and why God forgives. Because God, in the Islamic tradition, it is God presents himself to us in the scriptures. He says, and I am the most forgiving, the most merciful, the most compassionate, right? And there's this notion that is within the scriptures where God says that, and if would you not want me to forgive you for your sins? Do you not want me to forgive you for your sins and be merciful and compassionate towards you when you make mistakes? So then do that for each other as well. So it's like if I expect and want God to forgive me and be merciful and compassionate towards me when I commit my mistakes, and even beyond mistakes when maybe I commit a sin, which is about engaging in doing something that I know is wrong, that I know is harmful, hurtful. Then I need to hold myself to the same standards when it comes to the way that I relate to everyone in my life. Right? So I'm like, wow. I mean, it's like, depending on where you are in your life and what point of growth and healing you're at, you look at these teachings and you relate to them in very different ways, right? And so when I was first starting to engage in the process of forgiveness, the idea of being merciful and compassionate towards the person who abused me, it was just unimaginable for me, right? But I did the best I could. But when I finally got to a point in my healing and growth where I actually began to feel, I was able to feel, and I began to feel the sense of compassion and mercy towards the person who had abused me, I also understood the other great teaching that is related to forgiveness. And it is this notion that, forgiveness is an act of great strength. Like the person who forgives, who does the forgiving, is actually in a stronger position and is doing something that requires great strength and even great courage. And when you do it with, at the level of forgiving with mercy and compassion, you understand that, wow, I'm forgiving, and it's important that we learn to forgive each other because we are weak. We are weak creatures. And we all make mistakes. And when you understand that, hey, you know what? A lot of times the reason people act in the way that they act is not because they're just crazy, evil, bad people. But people are really, even when they make these kinds of decisions that we label to be bad and evil and all those kinds of things, that really the vast, I would say 99% of the time, 99% of those people are just making the very best decisions that they can with what they know and what they have. to help themselves, overcome some kind of challenge or problem that they're facing, to meet some need that they have, some deep need that they have, and they cannot figure out a better way to meet it. It's like we all make mistakes, And so it's like, okay, what can we do to open up our hearts? Open up our hearts, find the courage, find the strength to forgive each other, because we all make mistakes. This is such an important notion, but now again, I will emphasize to you that, look, forgiveness is a process, and it happens over time, especially the deeper the wound that you have, that you're dealing with. It can take more time, okay? So if right now, what I'm saying, what I'm talking sounds unfeasible to you when you try to apply this concept to your own situation, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Remember what I've been telling you all along. When I first started to engage in the forgiveness process, all of this just felt like a lot of theoretical book talk to me too, right? So give yourself time. Just do the best you can with what you know and what you have in this moment right now. The most important thing is that you just commit to the forgiveness process. And if you need to do it for the very selfish reasons, like I did, look, I just want to feel some peace for me. Because that anger, that negativity is eating me up from the inside. It's like I'm drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, So I need to stop drinking the poison. So it's like, for me, it was a very selfish reason to even begin to engage in the forgiveness process. But you know what? That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So if that's kind of like where you are at right now also, that's fine. Just commit to the forgiveness process. Commit to forgiving yourself and anyone else in your life that you may be holding on negativity towards. And just begin the process. Okay? And in fact, this whole time, when I was going, like especially when I started my forgiveness journey, look, I didn't know everything that I know now, right? Especially in terms of I didn't have all the tools and the knowledge and the skills that I have now in terms of the different methods, the different procedures, the different exercises that can be done to help us along our way in the forgiveness process. So, it was a little bit more tricky for me at that time to be going through the forgiveness process. But now I know a lot more, a lot better. And I will share some of the specific exercises and techniques that I've learned that have really, really been helping me and allowing me to help my clients see much, much faster results when I help them through the forgiveness process. Okay, so I will share some of those with you next episode. And in the meanwhile, I just want to remind you that, hey, if this is something you find yourself struggling with, please do not continue to struggle with it on your own. Reach out for help and support. You'll make your life so much easier if you do. And I'm one person that you can reach out to for the help and support you need. Just go to my website at www.academyofthriving.com. click on the Contact Us page and you'll see exactly how you can reach me. All right, so until we connect next time, I wish you lots of peace and joy.